Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker. We begin with a question that has loomed over our politics for years now and taken on new importance in the wake of the midterms. What is the state of extremism in this country? It's a question that isn't easy to answer, and one widely followed report that is supposed to give us some clues into a key component of extremism in America has itself only raised more questions. Every year, the FBI releases its annual report on hate crimes. And this year, experts were expecting it to show a significant rise in incidents across the country. But the report out this morning is, in a phrase, woefully incomplete. According to the Bureau, more than 7,200 hate crimes were reported to the FBI last year. But experts say that represents just a fraction of the actual number, because the statistics are from just 65% of police agencies who reported their data to the FBI, down from 93% the previous year. And some of the largest police jurisdictions, including New York and Los Angeles, are among those departments that did not report their numbers. But for a more complete picture, a study by the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at Cal State San Bernardino found a 20% increase in hate crimes last year compared to 2020. That study also reports a 4.7% increase in hate crimes for the first half of this year. Meanwhile, the second half of 2022 has been marked by a series of high-profile attacks suspected to be hate crimes, including last month's mass shooting at an LGBTQ club in Colorado. Combating violent ideologies is an issue that the Biden administration says is high on its priority list. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas spoke at an event on combating anti-Semitism in New York just this morning.
Our work continues. We hope to one day, of course, eradicate hate. To this end, each of us can reach out, use our convening power, and bring people together. As we do so, we will continue to dedicate ourselves to keeping our community safe and secure.
Joining me now is NBC News correspondent Jacob Soboroff. He sat down with the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas as part of a News Now special on anti-Semitism in America. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian. And in a moment, I'll be joined by Cynthia Miller-Idris, the founding director of American University's Polarization and Extremism Research Lab. Ken, let me start with you. Break down what we have learned from this report and where it falls short. There are still a lot of questions, right?
That's right, Kristen. I wouldn't say we've learned very much, because with only 65% of police departments reporting, you really can't draw many conclusions from the numbers that the FBI provided today, except that they counted an aggregate number of 7,200 hate crimes, which, even though that's incomplete, would be the third highest in a decade. But most private experts who've studied this say that they believe that 2021 was a record year for hate crimes and that 2022 may break that record. But we just don't know that from the data, because the FBI changed its reporting requirements to a more complicated methodology that they say ultimately will tell us more about crime, but it's more difficult for local police departments to comply with. And although they've had years to figure out how to do this, many have not done it yet. And so not only local cities like New York and LA did not report anything, major parts of big states like Florida and California didn't report. And so we just have an incomplete picture of the situation with hate crimes. By the way, this reporting problem also surfaced when the FBI put out its aggregate level of crimes a few months ago, but they used estimates to fill the gaps. They're not able to do that with hate crimes because there aren't enough hate crimes. So we really have an incomplete picture.
Well, Ken, let me follow up with you, because when you're talking about major cities like New York and LA, the expectation is they would be able to report out these statistics. So why is their data missing?
Well, for one thing, experts say they are not required to do this. And so if they decided that this was too technically complicated and they didn't have the staff to report it exactly the way the FBI wanted it, they weren't able to do it. Now, the FBI promised that things will improve next year. It's a gradual process. The Justice Department has awarded grants to various jurisdictions to help them comply because it's more labor intensive, apparently. Look, New York knows how many hate crimes there were, but they haven't reported them to the FBI in the way that the FBI wanted them.
Well, and DOJ did put out a press release pegged to the crime numbers, basically listing various initiatives to quell hate crimes and extremism. So is the implication and the message that they are taking serious action despite the fact that they have this incomplete data?
That was certainly what I got from that news release, which came out hours after this FBI release. It was almost the Justice Department saying, look, we know this isn't great, but here's everything we're doing on hate crimes. And the Biden administration has really made a point, and the FBI under Christopher Wray, of going after these crimes, and they're horrific crimes. I mean, just a few weeks ago, a man pleaded guilty to burning a cross in Mississippi in his yard to intimidate a black family. And back in August, a Texas man was sentenced to 45 years in prison, Kristen, for slashing an Asian family, including a 6-year-old child, in a Sam's Club in Midland, Texas. So really horrific crimes, and the DOJ is taking them on.
Such incredibly disturbing details that you lay out there, Ken. Jacob, let me turn to you. Congratulations on this exclusive with the DHS secretary. What was his big message to you? You obviously were focusing on the issue of anti-Semitism. What did he say?
That data or not, Kristen, that there is an epidemic of hate in the United States of America. Those are the words of the second gentleman. But Secretary Mayorkas himself has been out front and outspoken about the issue of potential domestic terrorism targeting not just Jewish Americans, but religious minorities, ethnic minorities, LGBTQ plus individuals. He issued a national terrorism advisory bulletin just last month saying that all of these groups could be subject to violent attack here in the homeland, in the United States of America. But in particular, anti-Semitism is important to Secretary Mayorkas. He's Cuban-American, but he's also Jewish-American. His mother fled the Holocaust. He lost 9 family members in the Holocaust himself. And when he sat down for his confirmation hearing, he had said anti-Semitism and combating it is one of the top issues for him. He wanted to eradicate hate. I asked him about that. Here's what he had to say. Nearly 2 years ago at your confirmation hearing, you said that you had wanted to tackle the issue of anti-Semitism once and for all. But what I hear you saying today is it's only gotten worse.
I think that's absolutely right. But our fight has only become more fervent. The resources we have invested in it have become greater. Our dedication to addressing targeted violence against any group has become more and more intense. Unfortunately, Jacob, as you correctly note, the need for it has increased as well.
You know, we didn't just talk about that need, Kristen. We talked about the causes, and one of the causes that we spoke about was words and how anti-Semitism and those words matter so much. They turn into more than words. We talked about former President Trump's dinner with Nick Fuentes, the words of Kanye West, who was also at that dinner with them at Mar-a-Lago. And Secretary Mayorkas very pointedly called that type of language that we heard from Kanye West horrific.
Jacob, you talk about some of the actions that DHS is planning to take and has already taken, but what kind of resources does DHS have? Do they have enough, or are they going to need to ask for more funding from Congress? What's the outlook there?
I think his perspective is it's both. They have given grants to state, local, non-governmental organizations to help harden targets against potential attacks, anti-Semitism or hate or otherwise. But he is also well aware that there is a lot of work yet to do, and especially in the area of speech. And what a fine line that is. Ken knows this well. There was a Senate Homeland Security Committee report that called out the Department of Homeland Security for not being tough enough on rooting out domestic terrorism on the internet. And Secretary Mayorkas and I talked about the challenges associated with that. He said, look, speech is protected. Free speech is enshrined in the United States Constitution. But it is when that speech veers into hate speech that turns into violence, that's when there is a real challenge. And that's where the Department of Homeland Security is trying to step in and put their resources towards combating.
Ken, let me get your take on what Jacob is saying, because it's such an important point, right? That what is happening online it can be very dangerous in and of itself. So talk a little bit about what the FBI, other law enforcement agencies are trying to do. And as Jacob rightfully notes, it's really a fine line. To some extent, hate is protected under free speech.
Yeah, it's an excruciating dilemma, and I'm so glad that Jacob was able to ask the secretary about it, because DHS has actually taken some steps this year to more heavily scrutinize public social media. Again, we're talking about things that people put in public, not private communications, which would require a warrant. But what we learned from January 6th is that there was a lot of signals from public social media, people saying they wanted to do violence and wanted to come to the Capitol, that the FBI and that other agencies, including DHS, did not feel they could act on because they didn't think it was specific enough, and they were worried that they were crossing into First Amendment considerations. And they may have learned a lesson from that, because certainly that Senate report that Jacob referenced was urging DHS and FBI to do more within the law, within the First Amendment, to look at things that people are posting publicly to the extent that they're calling for violence, that they're espousing hate. Because at the end of the day, this is what we call open source intelligence. It can predict bad things happening, and it can mobilize the government to take steps to stop those things.
You know, it's so interesting, Ken. I was talking to someone over the weekend, a top U.S. official, who said in the wake of January 6th, the message was not only that there are real vulnerabilities, but that we can never let that happen again on U.S. soil. What are your conversations bearing out about that in the wake of January 6th?
Well, it's so interesting that you asked me that, Kristen, because right now we're in the middle of a debate over what exactly is going to be in the January 6th committee's final report, because Ryan Riley, my colleague, and I have written stories about a particular team of investigators whose whole job was to look at law enforcement failings and why January 6th was able to happen, leaving aside what Donald Trump and the people around him did. Where was the FBI? Why didn't they stop it? Where was the National Guard? Why didn't they get there quickly enough? There are some findings on that. It's just, it seems to be up in the air right now whether those are going to see the light of day and be in that final report. But I have to believe that eventually they will find their way to the public in some manner, because they're very, very important, Kristen.
Certainly, indeed, they are. Jacob, final to you. Based on your conversation with the DHS secretary, where do you think this issue goes from here?
Well, he says it's extremely important, Kristen, to create a larger national conversation around hate in America. The second gentleman used the words an epidemic of hate. Clearly, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas sees this as a central part and a growing part of his job. And it's one that he, quite frankly, has not been able to tackle in the way that he wanted to tackle when he came into this office almost 2 years ago. So now faced with potential impeachment, threats to resign or be impeached over his handling of the border with Kevin McCarthy going down to the border and saying that to him directly, and it's something that he and I talked about today. He's doubling down on focusing on not just the border, but this issue in particular as a signature hallmark of his tenure as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security.
Well, Jacob, we look forward to seeing your entire interview a little bit later. Jacob, Ken, thank you both so much for your incredible reporting. We did have some technical difficulties with Cynthia Miller-Idris, and we will have her on to speak about this critical topic very soon.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.